Hi everyone, I finally got around to make this video about the Hobbit and philosophy for when you've lost your dwarves, your wizard and your way. Edited by Gregory Basham and Eric Bronson. I talked about this in a few videos and this is a book containing very interesting essays by professional philosophers and other experts about philosophical themes in this little book, which is The Hobbit, There and Back Again by J.R.R. Tolkien from 1937. And I must say I've only read this book once in my life as a child, and I didn't read it again. I want to read it in the near future because I'm interested in the themes in there and in the book itself now. I read The Lord of the Rings 6 times as a teenager. It was my absolute favorite book when I grew up, and it had a very huge influence on me, on my own writings as a teenager, and I'm still carrying it with me to this day, although the kind of fantasy that I write nowadays is very different from Tolkien and his world. But The Hobbit didn't have this impact on me. As far as I remember, I thought it was a good book, but I lay it aside and I didn't look at it again, and now I regret that. As I say, I want to read it again, and I will probably make a video about it when I've read it and the way I found it now. But now to these essays. What's the philosophy in this children's book? Early in the book there is the dream of adventure. Bilbo wants to see the great mountains, we are told. He wants to hear the pine trees and the waterfalls, explore the caves and wear a sword. But the story turns from a pure adventure story into one about personal growth. And there are several similarities between The Hobbit and Plato, actually, interestingly enough. And one of these is mentioned at the beginning of this book about philosophical themes in The Hobbit, namely the very famous allegory of the cave in Plato's Republic. So what's the story in this allegory? There are a few prisoners who are chained to a wall in a cave, and they see only shadows on this wall which they take for reality. And these shadows are shadows not of human beings but of statues carried by human beings behind them. And between the prisoners and these human beings carrying the statues is a fire and a wall. So what the prisoners are seeing on this on the wall of the cave is actually just the statues that the human beings are carrying above their heads behind this wall, behind the fire. And what happens is that one of the prisoners escapes and comes up into the sunlight, and he sees the sun and he sees the world, which of course is true reality. Then he goes back into the cave and tries to talk about these things that he has seen to the other prisoners, and they flatly refuse to believe him, calling him mad. And this of course is a picture of the philosopher as Plato saw him. And what does this have to do with this children's book, The Hobbit? Plato hoped that the readers would learn something, get out of their comfort zone, admit their limitations and be open to new ideas. That's one of the aims of this allegory. It's about growing by confronting challenges and taking risks, and these are also important lessons from this book, The Hobbit. Both The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings are stories about ordinary persons accomplishing great things by accepting challenges and enduring hardships, growing from conventionality and comfort to courage and wisdom. It's a quest for one's true self. And wisdom, according to philosophy and religion in the West, is an insight about living, understanding what is important in life and what is needed to live well and to cope with problems. Socrates, in Plato's version of him, sees self-examination as the first step to wisdom, asking oneself, could I be wrong now? Am I living the way I want to live? How can I live meaningfully and authentically? J.R.R. Tolkien's colleague and friend C.S. Lewis thought that pain and suffering make us patient, humble, and strong. There is a similarity in The Hobbit because Bilbo has to endure cold, hunger, sleeplessness, fear, and fatigue, which make him discover his unknown talents, including one for leadership and values like loyalty, honor, courage, pity, mercy, generosity, and humility. A main theme in the book is greed. Greed offers a false promise of happiness, the authors of the book about philosophical themes in The Hobbit say. According to the medieval philosopher and main philosopher actually of the Catholic Church, Thomas Aquinas, greed violates both our duty to love our neighbor and our obligation to love ourselves, harming both ourselves and others, leading to crime, war, exploitation, and environmental damage. Greed leading to war is a central theme in The Hobbit. According to both the Buddha, the Greek cynics, and the American writer Henry David Thoreau, greed leads to psychic dependency. It generates fear and envy, and it is insatiable. Thorin's dragon sickness is an obsessive craving for gold that affects those who touch a treasure that a dragon has long brooded over. Gollum's obsession with the ring makes him miserable, fearful, and dependent. Another important theme in the book is pride. Pride is a cardinal sin which leads to all kinds of evils, beginning with Melkor's introduction of discord into the music of the Ainur in Tolkien's book The Silmarillion, over Isildur's refusal to destroy the ring at the end of the Second Age in the history of Middle-earth, Thorin's stubbornness, Saruman's corruption, and Denethor's despair in The Lord of the Rings. According to Catholicism, pride is the deadliest of the 7 deadly sins, since it separates us from God and from men. The good people in the books, like Beorn in The Hobbit and Bombadil in The Lord of the Rings, live in harmony with all living things, and they care nothing for wealth, status, and power. The happy communities described in The Hobbit are the Shire, Rivendell, the forest realm of the Wood Elves, and Beorn's house. A life of simplicity, harmony with nature, non-striving, and tranquility allows for inner peace and happiness, a view similar to Taoist thinking. Thoreau too advocated a simple, self-reliant life in harmony with nature, and he stressed the importance of walking for physical and mental health. Through woods, over hills and fields, free from all worldly engagements, Bilbo grows as a hobbit during his long walk to the Lonely Mountain. And in The Lord of the Rings, Aragorn has been building his strength and endurance during his long journeys through Middle-earth, which makes it possible for him to take on the great task of protecting the ring-bearer and later to become king. Other of Tolkien's wise characters like Gandalf and Beorn are also great walkers. Another important aspect of growing as a person in Tolkien's world is one's connection to a certain place, where one lives and which one loves. He stresses the good of domestic beauty and the simple delights of home and hearth. Before he dies, Thorin wishes that more people would value food and cheer and song like Bilbo does, above hoarded gold. Connected to this is one's capacity for enjoying beauty. Whereas artworks are artifacts for pure enjoyment, machinery aims at creating power which cannot satisfy us, but instead leads to horrible evils, like the destruction of the environment and the loss of our humanity. Tolkien conceived of this against the background of the horrors of World War I. For Tolkien, creativity and the appreciation of beauty are signs of moral and spiritual health. In The Hobbit, the good are creative and responsive to beauty. The bad, like goblins and trolls, are not. The elves are described as being primarily artists. The dwarves too were artists once, before they became concerned with money. An important aspect of creativity is play. According to the ancient Greek writer Xenophon, the playful pursuit of wild game was the best school of life. The Dutch historian Johan Huizinga claimed that philosophy was born in wordplay, specifically in riddles. The sophists in ancient Greece used to challenge each other with riddles. For Socrates, the highest kind of play was philosophy. Playing with ideas was like sowing beautiful gardens in thought, Plato tells us. Riddles are the beginning of metaphysics and epistemology in Plato, and it provides insight into ethics. Aristotle was more critical of play, but he acknowledged that it is a kind of training and that we play in order that we may be serious. Friedrich Schiller in the German Romantic movement claimed that man is only wholly man when he is playing. For Tolkien, art was a kind of play in which we imitate the divine, like the god Aule in the Silmarillion, who created the dwarves out of playfulness. During his journey, Bilbo is able to make use of things he learned in his childhood, like throwing stones at a target. Of course, other kinds of playful activities like rock climbing and fishing may also prove very useful during an adventure. And even Gandalf is playing with his fireworks, which represent a magic aiming at pure enjoyment, as opposed to the power-based voice magic of Saruman in The Lord of the Rings. Goblins, on the other hand, don't play, and although they are very interested in developing efficient machinery of destruction, their lack of playfulness inhibits their capacity for invention. These were a few of the themes in this book, The Hobbit and Philosophy, which I really enjoyed reading. I'm very interested in reading The Hobbit again now to think about these philosophical themes. I enjoyed very much, for example, the connection between walking and wisdom. I think there's a great wisdom in there and in walking. This is an absolutely wonderful series, the Blackfell Philosophy and Pop Culture series of books about philosophy in popular culture, and I will certainly read more books like this in the future and talk about them here on my channel. I thank you for your attention. Please don't forget to subscribe. Feel free, of course, to leave your comments below what you thought about this presentation, and I'll talk to you soon again.